Why Bill Gates is acquiring farmland in the US. Did you know that Bill Gates owns land that is bigger than the entire city of New York? But did you know that the land owned by Jeff Bezos is twice as large, totaling 420,000 acres? Did you also know that the largest private landowner in the United States and the sole owner of 2.2 million acres, an area just slightly smaller than the island of Puerto Rico, is John Malone? Despite the fact that the United States is enormous, the top 100 wealthiest private landowners in the country own 1.86% of the country's total land area, with the majority of their holdings consisting of farms, ranches, and forests. Some people consider farms to be beautiful, serene, and pleasant places to live. The land is becoming increasingly valuable. However, not everyone is profiting from the increase in farmland prices. If prices keep increasing, it will be more difficult for farmers, especially beginning farmers. Everything is rising. The land is important. Farmland in the US is often neglected, but it's at the core of how our communities and people thrive and continue. Why then do the extremely wealthy invest in farmland? And how will it affect the agricultural sector? Hello there! This is the Financial Fortune, and in this video, we are going to talk about why Bill Gates is acquiring farmland in America. Please don't forget to leave a like, click subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell to be notified whenever we release new videos. Bill Gates gained attention in 2020 for becoming the largest American private landowner. In less than 10 years, he had collected more than 269,000 acres of farmland spread over 18 states. Shielding is done by purchasing land through shell corporations because it is a wise financial decision. The very rich and those with substantial money have always wanted land. It has a high intrinsic worth. It is a finite resource beyond that. There isn't any new production of it. In fact, the opposite is true. Every day, farmland is lost. Farmland is disappearing in the United States at a rate of around 2,000 acres every day. Not only does it become more and more crucial over time, but we also have fewer and fewer of it. Consequently, it is an asset with a rising value. Not just Bill Gates is considering making this investment. About 32.7 million acres of land were owned by the top 100 private landowners in the US in 2011. Today, that area has increased to more than 42 million acres, which is about the same size as Connecticut and Florida put together. Onions, carrots, and even potatoes required to produce McDonald's French fries are grown on his farmland. Thomas Petterfy, who owns 581,000 acres, is the 17th largest private landowner in the US. The reason he owns lands in the Midwest is that those lands are agricultural lands and he is not farming in Boston. They were typically bought at auction and there are multiple minor transactions involved. Once you possess one parcel of land, especially if you're a farmer, you frequently want to own the nearby parcels as well if you're really interested in buying that particular piece of land. Therefore, if you can make those purchases in private, it might be a much more effective approach to do so. With a few exceptions such as Maine and Florida, the majority of the land owned by the largest private landowners is forest, ranch, and farmland found in states west of the Mississippi River. When we think of farmland, we typically see the Midwest as having the richest, most precious farmland on earth. If you look at places like Illinois, Iowa, and other such places, it's like Manhattan of farmland. Nevertheless, there are also other significant locations where you'll see a lot of that large capital playing, and those are where the agricultural productivity is. These include California, the Pacific Northwest up in Washington and Oregon, and the Mississippi Delta. According to current estimates from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, landlords who don't farm themselves hold 30% of all farmland. The land is frequently bought from farmers who have owned it for years. Many of them may be cash poor while having many assets. The market operates in such a way that the land mostly transfers to those who will pay the highest price of it. As a result, non-farmers buy a lot of farmland. Many farmers want to sell their land to another farmer so that it can continue to be used for farming. However, because they have often spent their entire lives farming, they face certain economic realities. Their equity and retirement are entirely reliant on selling land. Institutional capital is expanding and taking up more market share. And when you consider the demographics of who owns farmland, it is a component of the wealth transfer that is taking place. The land can be used in a variety of ways to generate income. Around 39% of the 911 million acres of farmland in the U.S. are rented to farmers, and 80% of that rented farmland is owned by landlords who don't farm themselves. Many non-farmers who purchase land may then hire someone to farm the land on their behalf. They might rent out the land to other people to farm. And if the lease is well structured, leasing can actually be a highly effective method for farmers. The cropland cap rates that are currently observed in the Midwest are almost 2.5. So if you go out and buy a farm and set up the cash rental lease, you can expect a capital return of roughly 2.5%. In some circumstances, tax incentives encourage landowners to have farming take place on their property, and by doing so, they are effectively receiving a tax discount for the labor performed by the farmers who are leasing from them. However, it may occasionally imply that the farmers receive a discount on the leasing payment as well. Farmers in the United States have been significantly impacted by the presence of private landowners. Some claim that leasing farms have provided farmers new chances who otherwise wouldn't have the means to do so. The high price of farmland is one of the major obstacles for new farmers. And if you can work out a decent leasing deal with a landowner, you can farm profitably without having to make that initial investment. Because farming is a business, whether you are young or old, you are equally glad to lease the land. The farming industry is becoming increasingly specialized. There are many who are worried about what to plant. There are those who own and operate the machinery as well as those who plant. There are also those who commercialize the produce. Therefore, efficient farming does not involve a single person handling everything. Those opposed to the plan are concerned that new farmers won't be able to compete with wealthy landowners like Bill Gates. People who don't even reside in this neighborhood are swooping in and snatching land. They are able to live in California and purchase real estate with ease. However, those people that are not as wealthy as Bill Gates have to live, work, trim the grass next door since it hasn't been mowed in a year, pick up trash from the streets, and mow the lawn. They try to buy property, but they have to jump through a lot of hoops. Farmers are put in a difficult situation by expanding land competition and rising land values because they aren't competing against people who make the same amount of money as them. Leasing is the drawback of not actually providing farmers with the long-term security they require to make investments in their businesses. Farmers may find themselves in a very difficult situation if someone says, "Well, we are going to sell the land. Now you have the option to stay or you could leave." In other places, the involvement of private landowners has also resulted in skyrocketing housing and living costs. When you observe these rural areas, there are undoubtedly winners and losers among the many regions of the nation. When you enter the Mississippi Delta, for example, where a lot of cotton or tobacco industries they had grown over the years had been lost, you can see that some of these towns are really struggling because they have lost their industries, which has led to a lot of poverty in some agricultural areas. Whether private landowners are a force for good or bad for agriculture is still up for debate. However, more farmland is anticipated to enter the market in the future. When you consider who owns land in terms of demographics, it is unrealistic to believe that farmers will purchase every available acre over the next 20 years. Over the next 25 years, we anticipate that nearly 50% of the farmland in the U.S. will change hands in some way. At this point, it is still unclear whether or not the massive purchases made by the really wealthy are a good or bad thing. But hopefully, having huge landowners who can have a long view of the property, treat it well, and perhaps even be in a position to say lease the land to new farmers at reasonable prices might all be great. But with each US AG census, there are fewer and fewer farmers. The number of new farmers has also increased slightly, but not nearly enough to offset the loss of farmers. In order to encourage more young farmers, we must make it easier for them to access land. That ends our video. I hope you learned a lot today. If you do, please leave a like and comment down below. Share this with your family and friends. If you haven't already, click the subscribe button. This is the Financial Fortune, and thank you for watching.